Hey everybody, Don Georgievich here with Job Interview Tools, and today I want to give you my top 10 list of job interview questions and how you can answer them correctly. So let's get started. First one is, tell me about yourself. Now this is probably one of the oldest interview questions ever, but I guarantee it's going to come up at every interview you go on for the rest of your career. Plus, it's not just for job interviews either. I've been asked this question in sales meetings, luncheons, even while shopping for a new car. Now, obviously, the way you answer it depends on the context in which it is asked. But obviously, I'm going to cover it from a job interview point of view. And don't just think you know how to answer this, because your answer could negatively affect whether you get the job or not. And you want to take your time and practice what you'll say when answering this top 10 question. Even seasoned professionals who've been interviewing for jobs for 20 years or more still fumble their answer to this question. And that's what I want you to be prepared for. So here's some of the things that you want to do or say when you're answering this question. Keep your answer brief and related to your career and the position. Keep your answer on topic and related to your career while talking about your journey. Tell your interviewer how you got started in your profession, perhaps where you went to school or what got you interested in your profession in the first place. And then gloss over a few jobs and tell them what you liked about your profession and where you see yourself heading. Tell them a few things that you learned along the way and how those things have strengthened you. Now, before your interview and even during the interview, find out what they're looking for in the ideal candidate for this position. This could be experience, leadership strengths, management qualities, technical abilities. You want to find out what is important to them and weave those things into the fabric of your answer. That way, you sound like the exact person they're looking for. Now, don't do these things. Don't give your life story, because this is of no interest to them. Doing so will derail your interview faster than you can say next. Now, if you're changing careers and you have some older or unrelated experience, don't bring this up because it's pointless unless you're tying in transferable experience. Now, don't end your answer with a question back to the interviewer. Some people think that this makes them look smarter when they ask a follow-up question after delivering their answer. But for the most part, I think it's a poor strategy unless a follow-up question just naturally presents itself. But don't force one. My advice to you is to practice your answer to this question in front of a video camera without a script. Cover the three main points. Talk about the journey and how you got started. Talk about what you learned along the way. Talk about what you're looking for and where you see your career heading. And then get your answer down to 30 to 45 seconds at the most. And then keep watching your video and polishing your answer until you can deliver it flawlessly. And when I say flawlessly, I don't mean from memory, but deliver it naturally. And it should sound significantly different each time you say it. Click here to download my sample answers for Tell Me About Yourself. Next question is, why should we hire you? This question is your best opportunity to prove you're the best man or woman for the job. The key is to discover what they're looking for and why you're the best person for the job. Since you'll be competing against many other seasoned professionals, you need to articulate why you're the best person for the job. Let them know that, what you did in your last job and how that's related to what you can do for them in this job. You want to connect the dots for them and show them why you're the right person for this job. You'll want to do some extensive research to know what the company is looking for. And the best place to get this from is the job description, because employers leave all kinds of clues in there. Prove that you can help the company solve their problems is the best way to answer this question. So here's some things that you need to do when you're answering the question, why should I hire you? First, prove that you're a solution to their problems. Prove that you understand their problems. Talk about your understanding of their business, their competitors, and problems in that industry. Tell them how you've been successful before. Let them know that in your last job you were faced with similar problems and you solved them by doing blank. And then explain how you can do blank for them in this job. And when you connect the dots and demonstrate that, you're showing an understanding of their business and their problems. And then they will see you as a potential solution to their problems. Now, don't do this. Don't give a vague answer. Don't tell them because I'm the best. Don't tell them because you're hiring. Don't answer their question with a question. Now, my advice for you when answering this question, this is a great opportunity for you to sell yourself and show them why you're the best person for the job. Get your resume out and put it next to the job description and draw lines from job description duties and the requirements to your resume. And then talk about your experience as a solution to their problems. And that's why they should hire you. Click here to download my sample answers for Why Should We Hire You? Number 3, what are your greatest strengths? Now, they're asking you in a broad sense. So ask yourself, what are you best at doing? Are you a good leader? Are you a good manager of your time? Are you a great communicator? Are you a good planner? Are you good at convincing others of your ideas? Whatever you are best at doing, give the interviewer the top 2 or 3 things you excel at. When answering this question, do these things. First, research the job description to find out what they are looking for, and then leverage your strengths to match. If leadership is something they are looking for, then talk about your experience as a leader and projects that you've led. You always want your strengths to be well aligned with the requirements of the position you're applying for. Talk about your strengths as a solution to their problems. Now, don't do this when answering the question. Don't rattle off a list of strengths that are out of context with the job. Don't list personal strengths like you're a good parent. Don't list strengths that you're unable to articulate through work experience. Don't tell them that you're not sure. Don't tell them that you don't have any. And don't be modest with your answer, because this is an opportunity for you to sell yourself. Click here to download my sample answers for What are your greatest strengths? And number 4, what is your biggest weakness? Most people are afraid of this question because it asks you to tell them something that you're not good at doing. But if you're like anyone else, you have a lot of weaknesses, even me. So don't sweat it. There are 2 good ways to answer this top 10 question. First, talk about a weakness and what you have done to overcome it. And that way it's not a weakness anymore. Second, talk about a weakness that isn't related to the job, perhaps a personal weakness. You can talk about a weakness as it's a weakness for you, but the interviewer will see it as a strength. That's my personal favorite, is to turn a weakness into a strength. Now, do this when you're answering the question, what is your biggest weakness? When talking about your weakness, show what you've done to overcome it, so it's not a weakness anymore. Number 2, talk about a weakness that is not related to the job. Talk about a weakness so that your interviewer sees it as a strength. Now, don't do this when answering this question. Don't say that you don't have any weaknesses. Don't tell your interviewer that you're perfect in your work and you have no weaknesses. Don't tell them a real weakness, because chances are it's not really a weakness at all and you're just overly critical on yourself. I mean, don't worry, we all are. Don't tell them that your weakness is a lack of tolerance for people who ask stupid questions. Though one day I'm going to say that, really. Now, my advice for you, if you have absolutely no idea what to say, consider saying something like, I can get frustrated with people who miss deadlines, especially when my work depends on them completing theirs. Click here to download my sample answers for What is your biggest weakness? Number 5, why do you want to work here? Now, this is a genuine question, and all they want to know is what you like about their company, its products or services. So what is your driving reason for wanting to work for them? Have you always had a lifelong goal of working at Google or Goldman Sachs? I mean, this is your chance to express why you want to be a member of their team. And most importantly, the contributions that you feel you'll make as a loyal employee. Now, this question helps weed out desperate job seekers who are just looking for a job and not a lifelong career. So do this when answering this question. Tell them what you like about their business. Is it their products, reputation, services? Whatever it is, express your interest in it. This is a great time to compliment them on their products or reputation. You want to dig deep to find out what it is that attracts you to them and express it. Now, don't do this. Don't tell them you like their location. Don't tell them that you heard they pay well and have great benefits. Don't tell them because you heard it's a great place to work. Don't tell them because your friends work there. Don't tell them you want to work there to get some experience. My advice for you, try to connect your reason for wanting to work there with something personal or emotional. Maybe when you were a kid, you saved a little kitten from harm and you felt really good about that. And since that moment on, you knew you always wanted to help animals, and that's why you want to be a vet today. Click here to download my sample answers for why do you want to work here? Number 6, why did you leave your last job? Now, unless you're still working, you're going to get asked this question. Even if you're working, they're still going to ask you, why do you want to leave? But more often than not, if you're not working, chances are that you were laid off, terminated, or you just quit. So you just have to let them know the reasoning behind why you're not working at your most recent job. Now, if you left of your own free will, then explain why you left and what your plans were. If you were fired because of performance reasons, then a simple explanation is all that's needed. But make sure that your lack of performance reasons will not affect the requirements for this new job. So if you were laid off, then just tell them that many of us were laid off due to the economy and slowing sales of our company and products. But warm that up a little bit and put it in your own words so it makes sense and it sounds natural. So do this when answering this question. If you left of your own free will, then tell them why you left and reflect positively on your former employer and tell them that it was a hard decision to make, but you felt it was the right decision for you at the time. Now, if you're fired, then be as brief as possible and explain why. If you were laid off due to downsizing or the economy, then tell them this, as long as they're true. Now, if you were fired, tell them what happened and accept responsibility for it. Now, don't do this. Don't badmouth your past company, boss, or coworkers. Don't say that the pay was bad and you wanted more money. Don't say that the hours were terrible. Don't say that you could not get along with your past manager. Don't lie if you were terminated. And don't defend yourself or place blame on the employer. My advice for you when answering this question, now remember, you're not there to defend why you're fired. You're there to talk about what you could do for them. So it's very important to keep your answer brief when answering this question. If they want to know more, they will ask you, but don't volunteer too much information because it will make them more cautious about you. Now, more than anything, if you were fired, accept responsibility for what happened because this shows courage. And then explain that they were right and you were wrong, but that you learned from this experience and you're a better person because of it. Click here to download my sample answers for why did you leave your last job? Number 7, what is your biggest accomplishment? Though many people believe this is the same as the other top 10 question, what is your greatest strength? But it's really a completely different question, and here's why. An accomplishment is a noteworthy, high-profile task or project that you worked on or completed. Basically, you accomplished something, and it may or may not have played to your strengths. Your strengths might be in managing people. But your biggest accomplishment was writing a white paper that was published in Scientific American magazine. Do you see the difference? Do this when answering this question about your accomplishments. First, it's best to talk about a noteworthy accomplishment that is aligned to the requirements for the job you're applying to. Treat this somewhat like a behavioral question and answer it using the STAR method. Set up the situation. Talk about what you did, the action, and then talk about the results of what you, your project, or your team accomplished. It's best to use a work-related story, but if you're out of good stories, consider as a last resort a personal story or a personal accomplishment. Now, don't do this when you answer the question. Don't think that you need a grand accomplishment where you saved your last company from failure. Don't use a personal accomplishment unless absolutely necessary. Avoid using an accomplishment that does not cast you as the hero. Avoid using an accomplishment that is not related to your career. My advice to you, pick something you did in your career that has meaning to you and helped your last or current employer. Pick something you enjoyed doing and that it made you feel good about doing it. Optimally, pick an example that is related to the job or your career or the type of company that you are interviewing with. Click here to download my sample answers for what is your biggest accomplishment. Number 8, describe a difficult problem you were faced with in your career and what you did to overcome it. Now this question is sure to come up, and though the interviewer asked how you dealt with or solved the problem, he really wants to hear how you worked with a team of people to solve a problem. This is a problem-solving question that tests your critical thinking skills and is looking for 2 pieces of information: your definition of difficult and how you handle the situation. Now, this is a great question for showing that you are creative and a capable problem solver. I mean, you should have at least one of these stories ready to go. So do this when answering the question. First, prove you are capable of handling any problem that may arise in your new role. Your story should be one which puts you in a tough position where you analyzed and discussed a problem, reached a conclusion, and that you came out on top. Be concise. Talk about the people you had to work with and what was expected of them and how you tied it all together to reach a goal. A success story will be your best selling point in answering this question. The story you tell should demonstrate that you have all that is required to excel in this job. Now, don't do this. Don't say bad things about your past colleagues, managers, or your company. Don't tell them a rambling story that jumps from one story to the next. Don't tell them how you fixed the light bulb or unjammed the copy machine. Avoid telling a personal story unless you have nothing else to say. My advice for you, the best way to answer this question is by using a good team player example. Maybe you had to work with some very difficult people to accomplish a project or a task that no one else wanted to work with, but you were able to get everyone working together to complete the project with a tight budget and a deadline and keeping everyone in line and getting the whole project completed on time and under budget. You want to set up your answer using the STAR behavioral method, where you talk about the situation, the action you took, and then the results you achieved. Click here to download my sample answers for describe a difficult problem you faced and how you dealt with it. Number 9, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Many job seekers are afraid to answer this top 10 question because an answer that is inconsistent with the current position could disqualify them. But at the same time, who wants to be doing the same thing for the next 5 years? The best and safest way to answer this question is to give an answer that is based on the logical progression of the position that you're interviewing for. That way, you're showing them that you want to do the current job at hand, but as you get better at it, you would like to take on more responsibility and challenges and grow in that position. So do this when you answer the question. Your answer should reflect your commitment to the job. Give them a real plan for this position and where you see yourself going in it. Show them how you'll do it and the resources that you'll need along the way. Prove you have solid plans on how to attain your future goal. Now, since they're looking 5 years in the future, allow them to visualize you in this position 5 years from now. Show them a natural progression of you in this role. Be realistic with your 5-year plan. Now, Don't do this. Don't tell them that your plan is to use this position as a stepping stone in your career, or they'll feel like that you're using them for your own personal career gains. Don't give them an impossible 5-year plan that is absolutely inconceivable. Don't tell them you want their job. That's far too threatening. Don't tell them that you want to work here for a while and then move to another company that is your dream job. My advice to you when answering this question, start with your short-term career goals or goals for the position and then move towards the long-term and explain why that is the direction you want to move in. If you don't say why, it's harder for them to figure out if you're just sprouting off a meaningless answer or if your heart is really in it. Click here to download my sample answers for where do you see yourself in 5 years? Okay, this one is number 10. Top 10 questions. Do you have any questions for us? Now, this question usually hits job seekers like a ton of bricks, and most of them will simply say no. And that's the worst response you can give because it signals to the employer that you're not very interested in this position. And anyone who's seriously considering making a job commitment to an employer will certainly have many questions. If they don't, they're not as serious about the job, or they're just desperate and willing to take anything. You should have a good handful of questions already planned out before your interview. You want to ask them questions that will help you qualify them as a place you want to work. You may not realize this, but you are interviewing them too. And you have the right to tell them no thanks, just as much as they do. So do this when you're answering this question. Ask meaningful questions that will help you qualify them as an employer for you. Your question should reflect what you can do for the company. Ask them questions about the position and their goals for the position, as this will be a sound demonstration of your sincere interest. Highlight some of the things that you discovered about the company after your research. Ask the hiring manager if they feel, if you'd be a good fit for this position. Now, don't do any of this. Never say no. Don't ask random questions for the sake of asking questions. Don't ask questions that are unrelated to the position. Don't ask about benefits unless you're wrapping it up and you're on the topic of discussing salary and benefits. My advice for you, create a list of questions before the interview that will help you qualify this employer as a place you want to work at. Ask questions that will help you decide if you want to work there or not. As you're going through your interview, weave in your questions throughout the conversation and get them answered, because you don't want to wait until the end and then ask all your questions at once, because you'll likely be out of time. My advice for you, create a list of questions before the interview that will help you qualify this employer as a place you want to work at. Ask them questions that will help you decide if you want to work there or not. As you're going through the interview, weave in your questions throughout the interview. Ask them questions while the interview is going on and get them answered, because you don't want to wait until the end to ask all of your questions, as you'll likely be out of time. As you ask questions throughout the interview, your interview will be more like a conversation, and you'll be viewed as a stronger and more genuine candidate, one who's truly interested in this job and is doing his or her due diligence. Click here to download my sample answers for do you have any questions for us? All right, that wraps up the top 10 job interview questions and how to answer them. Now, if you're looking for more questions and answers, I have an entire book called The Complete Interview Answer Guide with over 130 different questions and answers in it, with my strategy for how to answer each question. I hope you enjoyed this video because I had a great time making it for you. For more great answers to interview questions, tips, advice, get signed up for my free 7-day online interview training program at jobinterviewtools.com/7days. We'll see you next time.